I'd like to talk to you today about what it means to be a craftsperson. This is a presentation about our view here at SAS Workshops on how we approach software development. It's about the values, habits, and practices that we have found useful for our own internal development projects and for our customers. All programmers exist on a skills continuum, somewhere between being a code and fix coder and a craftsperson. It's not a binary thing. You're not one or the other. You exist somewhere on the spectrum. We all do. We all start out as code and fix coders. We don't really know what we're doing when we get started. We know just enough to be dangerous. We know enough to be able to make our code work. We also know enough to make a really big mess as our program gets larger and things get more complicated. So why do I call them code and fix coders? Because they are constantly fixing their code. They don't have tests, so the code they ship is often buggy. And when fixing bugs, they often employ the random hope strategy. They randomly change things and then they hope the problem goes away. Often, they just end up introducing bugs in other areas of their code. And that way they become like a dog chasing their tail. At the other end, we have the craftsperson. They have tests in place, so they don't ship many bugs. And when they do find a bug, they take the time to find and fix the root cause. Their bug fixes don't cause problems in other areas of their code for two reasons. One, their designs tend to be very modular. And two, just in case, they always have tests to back them up. There are two things to notice about this graph here. One, it slopes uphill towards being a craftsperson. Being a craftsperson isn't easy. It requires effort. But it is achievable for everyone. And we are here to help you out. The purpose of this presentation is to convince you that it is worth it to put in the effort to become a craftsperson, and to show you how we at SAS Workshops can help you in your journey. The second thing to notice here is that there is no time axis. Years of experience doesn't matter. You could have 20 years of experience, or you could have 1 year of experience 20 times. The important thing is not time, but it's what's going on in your head. It's what you value and how you think about the process of software development. So how do you become a craftsperson? You may have seen a similar graphic before. Everything starts with our values. They influence the way we think, and that in turn influences the way we talk about software. And words we use, they do matter. Our words influence the way we act, and if we continue to act the same way over time long enough, it becomes a habit. And that is ultimately what leads us to the results that we get. We often mistakenly think that what we need to do to see results is take some big action. We think, if I suddenly started writing unit tests, that would change everything. Actions are important, and they're certainly necessary, but just focusing on the actions that we take presents a few problems. One, taking a single action one time does not create a habit. We like to think that success is based on one big decision or one big action. In reality, it's based on habits, which are a series of small decisions and actions that get repeated over time. That's the first problem. Problem number two is this idea of cognitive dissonance. When our actions conflict with the way we see the world, with the things we value and what we think, it produces stress, and your body tries very hard to eliminate that stress. So you don't even notice this consciously, but subconsciously your brain is saying these two things don't align. And it's trying to get them to align. And often the easiest way to do that is to just revert back to our old habits. So my family is Irish, and Irish people like to tell stories. So I think the best way to illustrate this point is with a story. And to be sure, this story is made up, but it's based on various conversations I've had with various developers over the years. So I really think it will resonate. So there's a guy named Bob, and Bob has a problem. Every project he works on, it seems to run over. And what's really going on is they don't do any unit testing, but they do some high-level integration testing before they ship. So that's a good thing. But the problem with this is that in order to run the tests, the software has to be almost finished. So Bob goes and writes a whole bunch of code, and as the deadline gets near, he finally gets to a point where he can run the tests. And of course he finds a bunch of bugs. But because the tests are so broad, it takes a while to actually track the bugs down and fix them. And often in the course of fixing one bug, he sometimes introduces another. And the whole process takes way longer than he had budgeted, and he ends up running over. And this is a really common scenario. So one year, Bob goes to NI Week, and he sees a presentation on unit testing. And he says, wow, that could really help. I could test my code as I go, and I don't have to wait until the very end to run all the tests. And so he decides that on his next project, he's going to write himself some unit tests. So he starts working on his next proposal. And he's sitting, he's thinking, he says, well, I'm not writing tests now. If I want to write tests, that's going to take some extra time, so I better add a line item for that. And his boss takes one look at it, and he rejects it, and he says, we can't do that. Your last project ran over, and now you want me to add more work to this one? That's not going to work. So he gets thwarted. And of course, the project goes on without any unit tests, and it ends up running over like it always does. But Bob is smart, so he says, I can't add a line item, so I'll just pad my estimate for writing code, and that will give me enough time to write tests. There are still separate tasks in his head, but he pads the estimate in order to fool his boss, and it works. It gets approved. So Bob writes some code, and then he starts working on some tests to test the code that he already wrote. His manager walks by and asks him what he's doing. Bob responds with, well, I'm writing some tests to test the code I already wrote. But the code is already done. Well, yes. Well, then stop writing tests. We need more features, not tests. So Bob sheepishly stops writing tests. And he goes back to adding more features. He's thwarted again. And again, even with the padding Bob put in, he still runs over. So Bob concludes that unit testing is just too hard. It sounds really great, but it doesn't work in the real world. So what can we learn from Bob? Is he right? Does unit testing not work in the real world? Obviously not, since there are some people who use it successfully. So what's the difference? What was Bob's problem? He took the right actions. He tried writing unit tests. The problem is that he didn't start by changing his values. What did Bob value? He valued getting code out the door on time. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. However, he missed two key points. And unfortunately for Bob, these small points had huge impacts. The first point Bob missed is that in his mind, he separated writing code and testing. He thought of them as two separate activities that were unrelated. We know this by looking at his words and actions. In his first proposal, he added testing as a separate line item. Later, when his boss asked him what he was doing, he responded with writing tests instead of writing code. The next point that Bob missed is that his definition of software that is done did not include testing. We know this because of what he says. When his boss asked him if the software was done, he said yes. If his definition of done had included testing, he would have said, no, it's not done yet because I haven't finished testing it. As you can see from the story, the key to becoming a software craftsperson and getting the results we want is starting by changing what we value. So the next logical question that you're probably asking yourself is, what should a software craftsperson value? These are the things that we value here at SAS Workshops. We value software quality. It's not about simply making it work. It needs to work in a way that is both reliable and maintainable. We value long-term thinking. We don't believe in cutting corners. We avoid taking on technical debt whenever possible. And we always talk about total cost of ownership. For us, software is not done and ready to ship until it is tested. We believe in incrementally delivering value. In the old waterfall model, the customer had to wait until the end of the whole process to actually receive any working software. Sure, they get documentation and plans along the way, but how valuable are those? We believe our customers shouldn't have to wait until the end to get something of value. We should be delivering them valuable, tested software on a regular basis. Our customers are our partners. We are both trying to solve the same problem. We value regular open communication with our customers so that we can get their feedback and so they can answer any questions that may come up. We value continuous learning. We are always trying to put new tools into our toolbox and refine the way we use our current set of tools. We also value being adaptable. The world is constantly changing and we need to change with it. We do that by regularly scheduling time to do retrospectives. We sit down and look at what is working and what is not, and we change course accordingly. So if the difference between a code and fix coder and a craftsperson is in what they value and how they think about coding, How can we tell if someone is a code and fix coder or a craftsperson? We can't exactly read their thoughts. The key lies in looking at the way they talk about code and their actions. So if you ask a code and fix coder where they are in a project, they're liable to tell you how much documentation they've written, or how much design work they've done, or maybe how many VIs they have written. If you ask a craftsperson the same question, they will tell you how many working, tested features they have delivered to the customer. If you ask a code and fix coder if their code works, they will probably just tell you yes or no. If you ask the same question to a craftsperson, they will show you that it works by running all their tests. A code and fix coder views testing as a separate activity from writing code. They only do it when necessary. That means when bugs are found or a customer demands it. For a craftsperson, testing is implied in everything they do. So much so that many craftspeople write the tests first. Code and fix coders are only concerned about making it work. Ship it fast is their motto. The quality of the code they ship is secondary if they consider it at all. Once it works, they rarely go back and clean it up. To a craftsperson, quality is implied. They don't ship anything that doesn't meet their high quality standards. They are constantly going back and refactoring their code to make it more readable and understandable, even though it already works. Code and fix coders are always chasing speed. They're always trying to go faster. Craftspeople also care about speed. Delivering things late doesn't add a lot of value. However, craftspeople realize that the way to go fast isn't the frantic activity of code and fix coders, but rather being slow and methodical. As Uncle Bob once said, you can't go fast by writing crap code quickly. So if you ask a code and fix coder, when was the last time that they talked to the customer, you'd probably get a quizzical look. Why would I do that? If you ask a craftsperson, if they haven't talked to the customer today, they most certainly have talked to them in the past week. If you ask a code and fix coder, what is the last new thing that you've learned, they will probably talk about something that they were forced to learn for their last project. A craftsperson will excitedly tell you about the book they are currently reading and all the new ideas it has given them. If you ask a code and fix coder why they do things a certain way, they will likely respond with, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, a craftsperson would respond with, well, we used to do it a different way, but that didn't work out. So now we're trying this. Do you have a better idea? To me, this slide perfectly sums up the difference between a code and fix coder and a craftsperson. Code and fix coders are constantly fighting fires. They're constantly running around frantically trying to get things done. A craftsperson, on the other hand, is more like Smokey the Bear. They're more interested in fire prevention and figuring out what the underlying causes of all the problems are and fixing them in a long-term sustainable way. Being a craftsperson sounds like hard work. So what are the benefits? If you're a craftsperson, you probably have a bunch of reuse codes, templates, scripting, and other automation tools. This frees you from spending a lot of time on technical problems and enables you to focus more on your real job, which is solving the customer's problem. Actually solving the customer's problem, delivering valuable software often, and valuing your customer's feedback helps to build trust with your customers. Customers who trust you are less likely to balk at your price, get a second opinion, or force you through lengthy contract negotiations, and are more likely to recommend you to others. Being adaptable lets you respond to changing markets quickly and get ahead of the competition. If you strive to write reliable and maintainable software, and you have a robust test suite, you will spend far less time fixing bugs. This gives you more time to work on other priorities, and it also helps to build trust with your customers. So, you decide you want to be a craftsperson, but you don't know where to start, because changing your values, that's a really hard thing to do, and you need some help. And you want to be able to make a sustainable change. So really, there's three things that we found that help people make a sustainable change. Number one is identity. It's about starting to see yourself as a craftsperson instead of seeing yourself as a code and fix coder. And then when you run into problems, you ask yourself, how would a craftsperson respond? And then you start responding in that way. And that really helps. But that's not enough. You need community. There's a reason that we're careful with who we let our kids hang around with, because we know that behaviors rub off. And so if we want to be a craftsperson, we need to surround ourselves with other people who see themselves as craftspeople. And so a good way to do that is to go to NI Week, the CLA Summit, those types of events. And the last little bit is, in addition to all that, you need some personal relationships. You need people who you can call up on the phone and ask for advice, and who are happy to talk to you and things like that. So my recommendation is go to the NI Week and CLA Summit events. Not everybody there is a craftsperson, but there are plenty of them there. And find a handful that you get along with, 2 or 3, something like that, and go out to dinner with them, grab a beer with them, get on that level where you end up with a friendship where you can call them up at any point in time and ask them questions and things like that. I know I have a couple in the LabVIEW community who I'm very close to, who I can call up at any time, and they're happy to talk to me and give me advice and counsel me and point me in the right direction. So those are the things that you're going to need in order to build a support system around yourself as you try to become more of a craftsperson. So how can we at SAS help you become a software craftsperson? Well, we offer a bunch of stuff. We have a blog where we talk about various software engineering topics, and we also have a series on philosophy of coding. We offer bi-monthly software engineering webinars. These are on the even months. And we talk about some software engineering topic. We do a presentation. There's a little discussion. We offer some online classes. This is new for us, but we're going to put together some online pre-recorded video classes. We have a mastermind group. We meet twice a month. We talk about some software engineering topic, and then we have a little homework and some discussion around that. And we have a private Slack channel as well with that. Currently, there's about 6 or 7 people. It's all CLA level. We're looking to start one for more CLD level people. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We also do in-person workshops. So we have a DQMH and a unit testing workshop. Obviously, right now, we're not doing them in person. We're doing them over Zoom. Maybe someday we'll start doing them in person again. And lastly, we offer personalized coaching. So this really just depends on exactly what you need, but typically includes stuff like code reviews, design reviews, pair programming, specialty classes, things like that. If any of that sounds interesting to you, you can always get a hold of us on our website, sasworkshops.com. My email is sam@sasworkshops.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Twitter.